Hey guys, welcome back on the channel. Fabrizio Romano here as always to keep you posted on the transfer market. And today guys, a busy market as always, big updates for you, many stories, and so we are ready to jump into it together.
Hello everyone, Arsenal transfer update. Quansah talks advance as Osimhen deal takes a dramatic twist. Hello Arsenal fans, welcome back to the channel. Today we have two major Arsenal transfer stories that could become very important before the summer transfer window closes. The first story concerns Bayer Leverkusen defender Jarell Quansah, while the second involves Galatasaray striker Victor Osimhen. Both players have been linked with Arsenal, but the situations are very different. So, in this video, we are going to separate the confirmed information from the rumours, explain what is actually happening, and finally decide which player Arsenal is more likely to sign. Let's start with Jarell Quansah. Jarell Quansah, Arsenal's defensive priority. Arsenal are reportedly looking at Jarell Quansah as they search for additional defensive cover. The interest makes sense when we look at Arsenal's current situation. William Saliba and Jurrien Timber have been dealing with injury problems, and Mikel Arteta does not want to begin a long and demanding season without enough reliable defensive options. According to reports from The Guardian and TalkSport, Arsenal have opened discussions regarding Quansah with Bayer Leverkusen. Quansah only joined Leverkusen from Liverpool last summer, which makes this situation particularly interesting. Leverkusen are not simply looking to give him away. Reports indicate that the German club would want a significant fee to consider selling him after only one season. The Guardian has reported a valuation around €50 million, approximately £43 million. That means Arsenal would have to decide whether Quansah is worth that kind of investment. And there is another important factor. Quansah is still only 23 years old, and his versatility makes him attractive. He can operate as a centre-back and can also provide options in wider defensive positions. For a manager like Arteta, that flexibility can be extremely valuable. However, Arsenal fans should not get carried away. There is currently no confirmed agreement between Arsenal and Bayer Leverkusen. In fact, reports from Germany are more cautious and suggest that Leverkusen would prefer to keep Quansah. So the correct way to describe the situation is this: Arsenal are interested, discussions have been reported, but the transfer is not done. That distinction is extremely important. Why does Arteta want Quansah? The biggest reason is squad depth. Arsenal are competing on several fronts, including the Premier League and Champions League. When injuries arrive, a team needs players who can immediately step into the starting 11 without completely changing the system. Quansah could give Arteta another physical and versatile defensive option. He also has Premier League experience from his time at Liverpool. That could make adapting to Arsenal easier than bringing in a defender who has never played English football. And there is another interesting part of the story. Arsenal have already done business with Bayer Leverkusen in recent times, including the arrival of Piero Hincapié. That relationship could potentially help negotiations, although there is no guarantee that Leverkusen will agree to another sale. Now let's talk about Victor Osimhen. This is where the story becomes much more dramatic. Victor Osimhen has once again emerged in Arsenal transfer discussions. According to ESPN, Arsenal have held talks with Galatasaray about Osimhen's availability. The discussions were reportedly connected to other potential deals involving Gabriel Martinelli and Ethan Nwaneri. This is important because it means Osimhen's name has entered direct conversations between the two clubs. But once again, we need to be careful. This does not mean Arsenal have signed Osimhen. It does not mean an agreement has been reached. And it does not mean that a swap deal is already happening. The Guardian has reported that Osimhen may have been offered to Arsenal in a possible exchange involving Martinelli and Nwaneri. That is a very interesting possibility, but at this stage it remains a transfer report rather than a confirmed agreement. The Martinelli situation, this could be one of the most important pieces of the entire story. Galatasaray have reportedly shown interest in Gabriel Martinelli and made an offer of around £38 million. However, reports indicate that Martinelli does not want to move to Turkey. That creates a major complication if Arsenal were considering using Martinelli as part of an Osimhen deal. You cannot simply include a player in a transfer if that player does not want to join the other club. Therefore, any possible exchange involving Martinelli would require several things to happen. First, Arsenal would need to agree with Galatasaray. Second, Osimhen would need to agree to Arsenal. Third, Martinelli would need to agree to Galatasaray if he were included. And finally, the financial structure of the deal would have to satisfy all parties. That is why the Osimhen situation is much more complicated than simply saying Arsenal want Osimhen. Yes, Arsenal have discussed his availability, but there are many steps between discussions and a completed transfer. Could Arsenal actually sign Osimhen? This is the biggest question. The answer is yes, it is possible. But right now, it would be premature to say that Osimhen is close to Arsenal. The striker is a major asset for Galatasaray, and any deal would likely require serious negotiations. Arsenal also already have Victor Osimhen as their main striker, so Arteta would have to decide how Osimhen would fit into his attacking structure. Would Osimhen start alongside Gyökeres? Would one of them rotate? Would Arsenal change their formation, or would Arsenal only pursue Osimhen if another attacker leaves? These are questions that need answers before we can realistically predict a transfer. Quansah versus Osimhen, who is more likely? Now let's compare the two situations. With Quansah, Arsenal's need is very clear. There are defensive injury concerns, and Arsenal are actively looking for additional defensive options. There are reports of negotiations with Bayer Leverkusen, but Leverkusen are reluctant to sell. With Osimhen, Arsenal's interest is potentially even more exciting for supporters. However, the deal is much more complicated. There are questions about the asking price, Galatasaray's position, possible player exchanges, Martinelli's future, Nwaneri's situation and Osimhen's own decision. So if we are judging only by the evidence available right now, Quansah appears to be the more realistic transfer, not because Osimhen is impossible, but because the Quansah operation appears more straightforward. Could Arsenal sign both? This is the dream scenario for Arsenal supporters. Imagine Arsenal adding Quansah to strengthen the defence and Osimhen to add another elite attacking option. On paper, that would give Arteta incredible squad depth, but financially and structurally, signing both would be difficult. Arsenal would have to spend a significant amount on Quansah while potentially negotiating a major deal for Osimhen. There would also need to be decisions regarding players leaving the club. That is why the next few days could be extremely important. If Arsenal sell some players, the situation could change quickly. If Martinelli remains at the Emirates, the proposed Osimhen exchange becomes more complicated. And if Leverkusen refuse to sell Quansah, Arsenal may have to move to another defensive target. My verdict. So Arsenal fans, who do I think Arsenal are more likely to sign? Right now, I would put Jarell Quansah ahead of Victor Osimhen. Quansah, serious interest and reported negotiations, but no agreement. Osimhen, direct discussions about availability, but the potential deal is much more complicated and remains at an earlier stage. My current assessment would be Jarell Quansah, around 7 out of 10 possibility. Victor Osimhen, around 5 out of 10 possibility. These are not official probabilities, of course. They are simply an assessment based on the information currently available. The biggest mistake would be to tell Arsenal fans that either player is already joining the club. That is not the case. The truth is that Arsenal are exploring both situations, but Quansah currently looks like the more realistic defensive target, while Osimhen represents the much bigger and more complicated attacking opportunity. And that is what makes this transfer window so interesting. Arsenal are not finished. There are still decisions to make, players who could leave and targets who could arrive. The next few days could completely change the picture. So Arsenal fans, let me know what you think. Would you rather see Arsenal sign Jarell Quansah, or would you take the risk and go all in for Victor Osimhen? And if Arsenal somehow had the opportunity to sign both players, should they do it? Let me know your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed this Arsenal transfer update, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications and stay with us for more Arsenal news and transfer updates.